Good morning everybody. Still having problems with our sound, still having problems with our feed at the moment, but we're working through them slowly. But we'll get there in the end. It's just a little bit frustrating sort of finding that there's a gremlin in there somewhere and we're not quite sure where it is. So bear with us. We'll do the best we can, and hopefully you can hear us today. If the sound is a bit off, we do apologise. We are working on it and we'll try and get it sorted. But for the moment we need to go live. So here we are. So today, if you look at my box at the moment, you can see there's a vast difference between what it was last week and what it is today. I got excited and decided I'd better do some work on the inside of it and get it all finished and put a coat of finish on it. So that's what I've done. So this is what it looks like up close. You can also see that I've added the hinges. Okay, so I've got these two nice little brass hinges in there. So I've got them fitted in there. All I've done is fit them. There's only one screw holding it in place, but that's to go. But I've put a coat of finish on everything, and as you can see, it's sort of brightened a whole lot up. If you go back to the last week's show, you'll see how dull it was. But just putting a coat of finish on there, and that's CONSTANTIA oil. And all I've done is just painted it in there. I actually haven't wiped it out. I just let the timber soak it up, and so that's you can see it's a little bit shiny in the back of it. Want to put another coat on there and give it a wipe over. It's going to look quite nice. So as you can see, it's come up quite nice. The other difference that you can actually see there is that the back of the box is actually way darker than the components in it. That's just a variation in timber, and for some reason or other it makes it look really, really nice. You can see the inside of the silky oak has got some really nice colour in it as well. It's going to look a bit like that on the outside when I've got it done, but yeah, as you can see, it's starting to look like what it's supposed to be. So when I open up this one, you can see it's quite nice on the inside as well. Mind you, we've got two different timbers again. And different configuration, basically the same sort of thing, but that's what we've got. Now we've focused on the box making last week. We didn't actually go into any of the work that's involved in getting our design done, and that's something that we need to do. We need to make sure, because this program's all about how to set yourself up a plan, how to plan your work, and doing the prototypes. That's what we have to focus on a little bit today. So before we start, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you something that I've done that I think is quite necessary, particularly when you're doing your design programming. Now, in the beginning, what we started with was a cutting list of parts based around the right drawing, based around a simple sketch or a simple design. So we had we just drew this sort of thing up. We had some measurements and some information that we had to add to it, and then we had a cutting list which we started, and as you can see, we've added little bits and pieces on as we've gone along. I've scribbled things out and I've written over things, and that's the way it should work. And then what we do is when we put it all together and write it up properly, we have the information that we need. So we went through that bit. Then the cutting list, we talked about the glass cabinet, the foot plate. Okay, so that was the bottom where the foot plate is, and as you can see, it's quite messy. Now I understand it because I wrote it, so you would be the same. If you wrote that, you would understand it as well. We then had the glass support cabinet, the glass support shelf, which was just there, and then we went on from there, we went into the door. So the glass shelf had to have all of the little bits and pieces that we did on it. The thing that we haven't added in is the jig we made to actually cut these rebates here. So we haven't got that written up yet, but it will get written up. And then we have the door, and with the door, as you can see, freehand. There's no need to get your instruments out just yet, just freehand, because it's all part of your sketching. And what I just did then is I just drew in what we'll have an arc at the top of it. So when we look at this door here, this cabinet, you can see at the top of the cabinet there is that cute little arc that looks nice in the box, and it relates to the shelf configuration as well. So you've got something that matches the door to something else inside the cabinet. So we're going to do that on the big one as well. So we need to put that in there. The thing that I've added since I spoke to you last was all of the measurements. So we've got all the measurements of the door frame, and there's the door frame there. What I didn't talk to you about was information. You'll see here on my folder, I've started writing out very brief instructions as to what I did, when I did it, and how I went about it. And it's not elaborate, it's just a description, so that when I go back over it later, I can actually fill in all the detail and put the information in that's necessary. So little steps, and we'll write it up as you go along. Now I haven't done a whole lot of stuff on there because I'd forgotten about it earlier, but that's what we did. So you need to be sort of dealing with that as you go. It's too late once you've got the job done to try and remember what you did, when you did it, and how you did it. So the idea is to try and do it as you go. Now, during the process of building the door frame, this is the prototype that we built right in the beginning. Now, it's the right size. It fits onto the cabinet. I'll just show you how it fits. So that's the door frame that's going to go on top of there. Now this one's not going to be used, and the reason being is because when I cut it, I didn't follow a procedure that I normally do every time I cut something on the router, and that's use a push block or something to stop blowout happening, and that's what's happened on here. And you can see on the bottom here, there's a fair bit of tear out, and it's damaged it quite a bit. Now, somebody said to me, oh, well, just chuck it in the bin and start again. And I thought, well, no, if you can't afford lots of timber, then you need to do something with this, because if you have budget issues or you have supply issues where you've only got a small amount of material, you need to be able to rectify what you've broken. So, when we look at this, I'll just get a pointer. If you come into there, Penny.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
If you see here, you can see the depth of my trench. Okay, that's for the glass. You can see between where the damage starts and the bottom of the trench, there's a fair bit of meat there. Now, if I was putting another piece of glass in there, or a piece of perspex, there is plenty of room there to be able to hide the edge of the piece of perspex and also hold it in place. Now, it just so happens that when you measure, or when I measure, the width of that, which works out to be at just over 16 millimeters, what I have here is exactly the same from where the damage starts, 16 millimeters. So luckily, that board there, if I cut this one down, that board will be the same as that one, or that one will be the same as that one, and the only different one will be the top one. Now the top one's going to get some special treatment, and we're going to go through that in a minute. So to rectify this, there's two ways of doing it. I can put that in a vise, and I can plane it. You'll need to mark it first, and then plane it. but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to a saw and do it with my drop saw. It's quite an easy task. So over to the drop saw. Just bring my fence up. This is the beauty of having this 90-degree fence at all times. It's going to be a straight cut. Now don't try and take the whole lot at once. So ears on. So what I've done there is I've just taken off the front edge of it. Now I could leave it like that if I wanted to. That would be adequate, that would work, but I'm going to take the rest of it off. Don't want it all exactly the same. Just make sure you have your safety. Now I have a little bit of sanding there just on the end. I could take another cut there, but I just need a little bit of sand there, and that should be adequate. So if we go back to our bench, I'll put this back together. And now when you look at the frame, you can see that that and that are all exactly the same size, and it looks quite nice. So now all I need to do is deal with the curve at the top. Now everybody knows that when you're doing a curve, a compass is the perfect tool to do that with. So when you're doing a curve, you grab your compass and do it. But this one's a bit different, this is a bit bigger. So I have a technique I use. I was having a play around with I don't know if you can see it, but I've got two curves on there, and it doesn't look very nice, so I'm just going to sand off my pencil mark. And now this is the way I go about getting my curve in there. So I measure in, and for this one here I've measured in 15mm. Now make sure you record this information so that you've got something to work to. 15mm. Turn it over, do the other side. I could use a square to do this, but it does the job. That's my 15mm. The next thing I need to do is I need to have a height of my curve. So my curve is going to curve around that way there. Okay? So what I need to do is I need to know the depth, because I don't want the top of the glass showing at the top of the curve. So I've got to come back a little bit. So mark the depth of the trench, and that's the bottom of the trench is the top edge is those two parts of the bridle joint. Like that, turn it over and do the other side. Okay, now how do I get a curve from there to there? Big compass. This is a simpler way. Turn it around that way. Sit it right up on the edge of the bench. Two clamps. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm clamping right on my mark. Do the same on the other end. I can hear you all saying, where is you going with this? You will see. Now, it's extremely important that you make sure that you're either touching the mark or you're just backed off a little bit. I'm going to back this one off a little bit. Make sure they're both the same. The next one is sit your ruler and just bend it like that. Hold it in the middle. And there's a perfect curve. Okay, what we need to do now is just turn it over. And set it up exactly the same. I could make a template, but this is a one-off. And I haven't had to go to the trouble of making the template. So I sit my ruler back in there. Where the middle is. Push it out. And then it's the other side. So what you could do is you could make sure you've got your measurement correct from the top of the line there, so that's 15 mil. If I turn it over and measure the other side, we're pretty much exactly the same there. Okay, so we've got both sides. Okay, how to get rid of that? Now I could take it over to the bandsaw and I could cut it on the bandsaw, but I'm not removing very much material. So what I've done with my little short linear is I've taken the guard off the end of it, which has given me a curve. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the linear just to take out the material in there. So over to the linear. And it's just a matter of holding it on there and just working around the rounded edge of the linear, which is what I'm going to do now. So here's on. Now that may take a little bit of practice. So if you're doing it for the first time, just go steady, do one side at a time. Just need to take a little bit off here. I could probably go back to the measure, but I won't. And just work to your line. Now if I had a template, I could just run this round and around a bit. But, like I say, it's just a one-off. And as you can see now, you can see there is plenty of room in the trench to be able to recess the glass down in there so you don't actually see the top edge of the glass at the top of the curve. So when we put that together, so now our door is starting to look like something with a little bit of character. You can see that we now have the curve at the top, and we have the rest of it here. Now because the door is the same on both sides, what I would do here is I would choose the side that I want to be the front. Now it could be that side, and I've got markings on here where I've already sort of basically done that, chosen which side I want for the front. And when I re-look at it, I'm not quite happy with that being in the front of the door, so I'm going to use that side as the front. And when you look at this, yep, a little bit of damage there, but that doesn't matter. We're going to deal with that pretty much right now. So when you look at this cabinet, you can see that I've rounded over that front edge. And that is quite difficult to do if you were doing each part individually. So this would be okay because you can round over from there to there without a great deal of drama. Trying to round over and stop at the corners takes a fair bit of setup. So this is how I've come up with having to round those over. Now we'll need some tape. So what we're going to do, I want this side to be rounded over, so if I turn it over, actually when I look at it I think I might use that as the outside. Inside, you think?
Where that face up now, use it as the outside.
Okay.
Leave the damaged piece
on the inside.
On the inside, yeah.
Going to round it over, so that'll take that off.
Oh, the one on the top of the curve, I mean.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit of tape. Now use something that will not move. So I'm just going to tape this up. The beauty about this fibre reinforced tape is that it doesn't stretch. So when you pull it tight, you're pulling it tight and it stays that way. So now I have the door and it's quite solid.
It's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. It's taped up. And now, trusty rounding over a bit. Set the height. I'm going to use my ruler to set the height because I don't want a step in the top, in the front. That's my height set. And the bottom edge, if you come in there,
Let's see if we can get that.
see if you can get that in there. The bottom corner of the round over is flush with the top of the table. So when you put the ruler on there, it just doesn't quite touch the corner edge.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to see.
A bit hard to see, but that's generally, that's what I'm trying to achieve. Okay, so now it's just a matter of running around my piece. So ears on everybody. Now, as you can see, it's burnt a little bit on the corners there, but that's neither here nor there. It can be sanded off quite easily. It's got a lovely round over on it, the shape, and so now we have the door in the sort of a situation that you would probably get it to before you sand all the parts. Now, the important thing to remember here is things need to be sanded before you actually start gluing things up. Now, I'm not going to glue it up yet. The other important thing to remember is that you have to measure up for your perspex or glass. So the first thing you do is you measure the depth of a trench. So once I've taken that off, my trench is 7 millimeters deep. All right? So that's the two side pieces. So if I measure from the bottom of there to the inside edge of here, I've got 182 millimeters, and instead of adding 7 millimeters, I want to leave a tiny little bit of gap there so I've got some movement, because the plastic does expand like the timber does. So I want a millimeter or so, so I add 6, so 188 millimeters wide. And this one is going to be, it's actually 5 millimeters deep. Remember, we took the bottom off there, so it's 5 mil deep. Just going to measure the bottom of this one. It really doesn't matter what the measurement is for that one. So you put your ruler in the top section, measure down to the bottom and add 4, and that gives me 254 millimeters. So 188 by 254, cut yourself a piece of perspex, sand all your components on the inside. Okay, so make sure you get all that in there. Put the paper in the trench, just sand out the sharp edges off it, and go through the process of getting that all sanded, because you can't sand it once you've got a piece of perspex in there. And then we can pull it apart. Actually, I won't pull it apart, there's no need to, because I'm going to go on to the next bit. Once you've got your perspex in there and you have glued it all together, check for square, so make sure that it's perfectly square by the time when you glue it together. Even if you have to put a couple of clamps on it, that's still okay, but make sure it's perfectly square. So we've basically got a door frame finished. Once you've got it glued together and you've got the perspex in it, this is what you end up with. I can shift that. This is one I did while you were sleeping. And you can see it's exactly the same, only a bit thicker on the bottom, or a bit wider on the bottom I should say. The frame itself is just a little bit wider, but it's exactly the same thing. Glued together, that's put into place, and I have my piece of perspex, and it's got a tiny little bit of movement in it as well. Now, to stop that from rattling, you can put a little bit of hot melt glue or something like that in one of the corners where it's not going to be seen.
Wouldn't worry about it.
Generally, don't worry about it. But it still will give you quite a nice result. So front, that's what the back looks like. I've already started hinging the back, and as you can see I've got one hinge fitted already. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I got to get the other one done. Now if you look back over the course of some of our projects, you will see the technique I used to actually cut the rebates for hinges in boxes where the hinge is fitted all the way to the front edge of the panel, right? And I used the correct size router bit. So go back and have a look at Trinket Box, which is one of the earlier programs that we did. There's a technique on how I did that, so you can go back and have a look at that and see how I've rebated for that. The technique for cutting the hinge in the lid of the Trinket Box was a little different. I used a trimmer router and took out the bulk of the material. This time we can't do that, basically because we've got no support on the bulk of the panel. So there's no support there actually for the trimmer router to sit on. So this has to be done by hand. So I've already done one because they take a little bit of time. I'm going to show you how I've gone about the other one. These are the tools that you need. I've got a couple of various bits of tools. A ruler and a square, a couple of clamps. So these are the tools. So basically all I've done is I've put the door on the cabinet. I've marked where the hinges are on the outside edges. You can see that I've done that there. Now the pencil marks are fairly light so you can't really see them, but one of the best ways of actually getting that to be in the right place is set it up so that it's exactly where you want it to be. Put a clamp on it in here and then mark all your markings. Alright.
Cole, can you tell Graham how you cut the perspex?
Woodwork tools, Graham.
You have to say the question again in case they can't hear me. They can hear me.
Graham, you were asking Pam, or you asked us about cutting perspex. I use all my woodwork tools. There's no special tools or anything like that you really need to get, apart from the fact that if you're going to use a saw, use a very fine blade saw. The perspex itself is fairly malleable and it gets hot just like timber does. So the idea is to make sure you've got sharp tools. You can use a coping saw if you like. If you have to file something, you can use an ordinary wood file I should say. So just using drop saw, bandsaw, any of those sorts of tools will do the job, but they need to be fine-tooth tools, okay, to get a really good job. So I use a ripping saw on mine and then I have to tidy it up, so it's one of those things. Anyway, back to here. Now, you can see that I've actually marked where my hinge is going to go. I've got the edges done, and I've got the depth of the hinge done. Okay, so it's just a tri-square for that, tri-square for that, so it's just a matter of putting a square on there and marking. The back edge, I set my marking gauge. Now I'm not going to unset the marking gauge, and the marking gauge itself, as you can see, has got a cutting blade on it. Right? So it's very, very sharp, and all it's done is scribed the back edge. So that's been scribed into the timber along the grain. And that was set by just sitting it onto here and just moving it over so it was touching the edge of that. So I've got the actual width of my piece of timber, and that's what I set on there. Now I've got that set at 2mm, and the reason I set it at 2mm is because I have to cut a depth as well. Now cutting a depth along the grain, it's very short, so it's just a matter of cutting along like so, and that will give you a nice sharp edge. You can see it's cut there quite nicely.
Just hold it still for a sec.
So that pencil's not sharp, so it's just give me a mark there. So that's the depth, and now the depth is half the thickness of the hinge. The other half, of course, is in the box. Okay, clamp. Yeah. To make sure that's nice and steady, make sure your chisels are sharp. Now, one of the things that I like to do, just to give me, forgot to do it, just to make sure that I get everything right, I'm just setting my ruler on my line. Now I've set it on the line, which means I'm not taking off enough material, and that's fine because then I can adjust it. If I take off too much, I can't adjust it because unless I add some. That's difficult. Not playing the game here. By putting the ruler on here, I've got an edge to lean the chisel up against. It's moved again. There we go. Now, square. Sit my square on there and scribe my line. I should have done this earlier.
It's good for everybody to see it.
Now you'll notice I'm not bashing this with a mallet. I don't tend to do that with my chisels.
You have to be careful not to go too deep, don't you?
Yeah, Pammy was just saying we need to be careful you don't go too deep. I'm just taking little bits off. And as you can see, the ruler is actually working as a guide, so I'm not overstepping my mark. Now I can lean the chisel up against the ruler. Make sure the ruler is down tight, otherwise it'll shift on you. And now it's just a matter of working out all the material. Derek said anything about the sound?
Yeah, he said it's good.
We're still having our sound problems
Monitored.
but as you can see, working with the timber, if you're using a hardwood, you can still get the same results. Without hitting it with a mallet.
Thanks for the feedback, Derek. We finally achieved what we set out to do, and that was have both of us on mic.
Oh, what was he saying?
He's just saying he can hear us both and that no sound issues.
Oh, okay. I hope you haven't fallen asleep, folks. Ozzy, you can wake up now, mate.
Perfection takes time, Cole.
Okay, it does. So as you might have noticed, there are two processes here where a little practice might go astray, wouldn't go astray. And the practice of cutting rebates. Oh, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe a little bit more out of it. It's not quite deep enough.
Wake up, Brian.
Oh, Brian's gone to sleep.
Yeah,
hasn't he?
yeah.
Make sure your chisels are sharp when you do this, and you'll also notice I've got my fingers behind the cutting edge. If you put your fingers here, you're going to cut yourself. Rule number one, keep your fingers away from cutting edges. Was it Brian last week that offered us a coffee?
I don't know which Brian it was. I think that was Brian.
Lucan.
Yeah, I don't know. Or Brian Laird.
A little bit in the corner here. Fitting time. And as you can see, when I take all the bits off it, there you can see that the hinge cavity now is quite tidy. It looks quite nice and sharp. The hinge itself actually fits very well. You can see that it's got a nice fit there. Oh, actually, just need the corner fixed. Just need to fix that corner. That's better. As you can see, a perfect fit.
There you go.
Okay, let's see if it fits the box. I know one that fits because I've already had it fitted. So So the bottom one fits.
Yes.
I always like it when it clicks in nicely. What's going on here? Pretty much got it right. Let's open out. Playing the game. Cut screws. I've already got this one screwed in the back here, so
Yep.
it's one in. My drill. Okay, the litmus test. Quite nice at the back. Once I get a magnet in there, that'll be a perfect fit. So the door fits really nicely. So all we need to do then is adjust the size, because you can see at the top, and this is what I do deliberately, is I leave it a tiny little bit more proud. So I need to dress that down so that it's actually flush with the top of the box. So you can just see a little lip on there, and on the bottom of the box we're already flush. So that's how good that is. So that works quite well, and that'll be quite a nice fit when the door is done. Right. So our next step is to put in a couple of magnets. Now, I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago about these little magnets. And I bought a packet of them, and it said they were 6mm or something like that on the packet. And when I measured them, they're actually 5/16, which is, if I had to use the drill bit that they recommend, I'd have too big a hole. So I had to go back to the 5/16 so I get a really nice flush fit. So all that's going to happen then, I won't do it on the show here today, basically because I've only got 2 of them. So they're going to fit in the corners. So I'll have one up in the corner there, and this one will be the mate that will sit in the door on the other side there. So that has to happen as well. So they're quite strong. And one of the other things that I did was, the cabinet is designed to take these glasses, right? So that logo is also in the door handle. So my door handle is going to sit in there, and you can see that I've got to have it up the right way. Which way does it go? Up that way?
Yeah.
So that's also going to have the logo in the door handle, right? Now that's made from a piece of black walnut, which doesn't go too bad with these colours. This one here, you can see I've got the same little door pull, made from the same material, a little bit smaller. Okay, so it does exactly the same thing. So it's quite a nice little one. And this is where the magnets go. You can see I've got a magnet there and a magnet there. And then I've got the two on the door. And that actually keeps the cabinet door closed quite nicely. So it's comes up quite nice. So that's what we're going to do with it. And then the last task that we're going to do with it is, oh, there's a glass in there, I better take that out. Is do something to the bottom of it. Now, with the bottom of the box, I could do a number of different things. I could make a little foot, or I could make a flat plate that sits on there and screw it to it so it has a bigger surface area, or I could do what I've done with the others and just stick a piece of felt on the bottom. Okay, so that will do the job as well. So I won't do that straight away because I've got to put a coat of finish around the outside edge before I actually stick that in place. Now the finish isn't going to alter how the felt works. It just means that the bit that you can see on the bottom is going to have a finish on it rather than having it all over the piece of felt. Okay, so that's what's going to happen with the box. And so there we are with all of our hardware fitted. Well, it will be fitted. The door is fitted. So if I put that over to the side, what I need to do now is to go back to my information. So what we need to do now is to start adding more bits to our information. So one of the things that we measured after we drew the curve was the distance from the top of the frame to the top edge of the curve, and we haven't added that in. So if I just put a little arrow here, and now I'm only doing this freehand, it's basically just some information to use when I go to draw up the proper plan for it. The other thing that isn't showing on the information is the shape of the rebates. So what I tend to do is I'll put a circle there, and then I'll just drop this here, and I'll go bridle joint. Okay, so it's telling me that we're using bridle joints at all the corners. And then what we need to do is we need to actually draw, and probably just a matter of doing it freehand. If you're any good at drawing, what we want to do here is just draw up what the frame is going to look like. It's a bit rough, but it's okay. You can now see the trench in the bottom. Okay, so often you'll find that just add on the bridle. Okay, so you can see now we've got a bridle joint. Once it comes out the other side. And that's what your framework looks like. Okay. Now, if you really get excited about that sort of thing, well then what you can do is you can draw the other end of the bridle joint, and that looks a bit like this. down in there, you can see there'll be a step for the other part of the bridle. So basically that's what your frame's going to look like. Okay, so this one you can label styles, and this is your bottom plate. And if you get really excited, you could actually draw up that with the curve in it so that it's showing the curve on the top edge. So you just draw another one. But basically what we've done is we've got some information there. Now, today we went through quite a lot of processes drawing various bits and pieces. We went through quite a number of different processes where we use different machines for different stuff, and it's always a good idea to record all that as you go. I keep saying that all the time: record, record, record. It's something that helps you along the way, and it eliminates a lot of errors that might occur, so that you can go through a process without too much of a drama. Somebody might ask you for a glasses case or a box for a particular reason, and if you've got all the information written down, then you're not going to have too much of a trouble actually building the process and getting it done very, very quickly. It's also a feather in your cap when you can come up with something very quickly that looks really professional. So the other thing it helps you learn more about your craft. So going through each of the steps bit by bit will give you a bit of time. So we have a couple of questions Pamela was going to ask.
Yeah, Graham.
Makeup.
Graham asks, he's accidentally put China wood oil over an old wax finish and it's gotten a bit messy. Is it best to sand back and reapply the finish? Yeah.
Okay, Graham, if you've put it depends on how thick your wax is that you put the Chinese wood oil over. You can sand it off again, but you've got to be really careful because it's going to clog the paper really, really quickly. So you probably need quite a lot of paper. You can
is there something that you can use, like a spirit oil that dissolve the...
Get in contact with Constantia and ask them if they have a product where you can use to wipe off their oil or strip back the surface coatings that they apply or they have that they apply. So Google, jump on the. I think
we've got details below. Yeah.
Okay, we've got some information below that you can link to. And get onto them and have a look, or ask them. Summer is very, very obliging. She will help you, and she's very, very knowledgeable, and she knows her stuff. So, yeah.
And anyway. The other question was from Peter, asking, is there a reason why we've put the hinges on the other side of the box, on the right hand side?
You know, Peter. That was a question that that Pam asked right early in the piece. You've got to remember, this is a craft object, right? It has purpose. I open a cabinet this way, but sometimes I like to open a cabinet this way. Now,
because you're funny like that.
It's because there is no particular reason I've done that.
It was accidental, wasn't it? Own up to it.
If you have a look at on the walls around my cabinet, and Pammy might pan up for you, I've got a cabinet here that I do exactly the same thing. So I pull it there. Because I'm right-handed, I can reach in and get my bits and pieces. But when you go across to the other side of the door, I've got one that actually opens from the other side, and that is for no particular reason. But
Sometimes it
for
can be.
expediency's sake, it's easier to do it that way than have the door come back onto the drill press.
Yeah, but you're talking about a fixed environment where
Yes.
you don't want doors clashing.
But
But this is just a little freestanding cabinet.
it's freestanding, and if you're a left-hander, that's fine.
Or from
If you're
different
a
culture.
right-hander, well, then through this one here, you've got to change hands to actually get things out. There's no particular reason. It was just a crafty thing. So yeah.
The other thing was Treecycle made the comment that he had seen the little tab on our Australian Wood Review ad that said the business is for sale.
Ah,
So
okay.
yes, folks, the business is for sale, but that means we want to concentrate on doing our YouTube channel.
Yeah,
And have a rest from the business, the manufacturing side.
yeah. Basically, that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, ring us and talk to us if you're interested in buying our manufacturing business.
But we're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere.
From YouTubing. We enjoy it too much.
Yep. So anyway. But anyway, that's it for this week. So
have a great week.
have a great week, everybody. And do you want to go and do your stuff? No? Have a good week, everybody. And I hope, well, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. We're nearly at 900. We went to $8.99 the other day, and then it backed off to $8.97 or something. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and ring the bell, and we'll remind you when we're on. As you can see, all of our shows are live, and we, try to bring you something a little bit different every week, or something, add something to the current shows, and yeah, it's just, hopefully it helps you in your woodworking, okay? But don't forget, we do sell, and still are selling, our jigs, all right? Until such time as the business is sold, we still have them for sale, and
That's not going to happen in a hurry.
Yeah. Okay, so have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next Sunday.